Hey everyone, welcome to Innistrad Midnight Hunt, and welcome back to Masonzero MTG. As always, I'm going to be going through some cards from this new set that I think could be interesting in Cube. While I am of course going to cover the overall 5 best cards that I think are going to make it into Cube, I want to also talk about some cards that others may have ignored that would help certain strategies, so I'll have a pretty big honorable mentions list here at the end. As usual, this comes with a disclaimer. I'm a little biased towards my own cube and my own preferences. I try to make these videos as generic as possible for the most cubes, but sometimes I misjudge. So anyways, let's get into it. First we have bloodthirsty adversary. All the cards in the adversary's cycle are pretty good, and their abilities scale with the game, which is fantastic. I wouldn't fault anyone for putting all 5 of them in their cube, but the red one, bloodthirsty adversary, is by far the most useful, I think. The absolute floor of this creature is being a 2/2 with haste. In an aggro deck, there is no shame in playing this mythic as a French vanilla creature. But when you kick it once, yes, this is just multi-kicker without the name, you can make it a 5 mana 3/3 with haste that lets you cast a spell with mana cost 3 or less for free. This puts it about on par with Goblin Dark Dwellers, a card that has found its way into some cubes for its great value. The downside of the Goblin is that it is competing with a lot of other great red 5-drops. Running the adversary means you can keep that slot open, with the flexibility of getting extra value in the late game for either 5 or 8 mana. Sunset Revelry is the perfect card for a control deck facing down an aggro deck, and it has enough conditions that it will always do something. Imagine playing this on turn 2 on the play against someone that played a turn 1 Monastery Swiftspear or Goblin Guide. You'll gain 4 life, get 2 blockers, and potentially replace Sunset Revelry itself, depending on mulligans and turn order. Even late in the game, it's a card that can help you stabilize, which is why I think it would be a great addition to your cube, and more playable than something like Timely Reinforcements. The Meathook Massacre is a fascinating black board wipe. The easy comparison here is Black Sun Zenith, and you could also say it's similar to Massacre Worm. Some might even say it's kind of like Fumigate combined with Blood Artist. Pump enough mana into it and it will kill most things, gaining you a ton of life and making your opponents lose a ton of life. This obviously shines in a sacrifice or token-based deck, so if those themes are present in your cube, the Meathook Massacre seems like the ideal scalable board wipe and potential game ender. Also, it's pretty cool that there's an enchantment that's also a board wipe. Bloodline Culling is a modal spell, and you know I love modal spells. And it actually might be pretty good. For 3 mana, you get to either Dismember or one-time Virulent Plague. Fun fact, this creature token effect has only ever existed on enchantments. Now obviously this isn't as good as Dismember, since you do have to pay the full cost, no Phyrexian mana, and Virulent Plague itself is a corner case of a card. But putting these 2 effects on the same card means you don't need to worry about sideboarding against a token deck, as the -5/-5 will be useful against pretty much any deck. If your cube runs cards like Elspeth or Young Pyromancer or any sort of mass token maker, this is a perfect token hate card stapled onto a useful removal spell, and you don't have to take up a slot that could be filled by something more generic. I think this card is perfect, and both modes are fantastic to have. Fateful Absence is one of the best white removal spells for cube to come out in a long time. For 2 mana, you can simply destroy a creature or a planeswalker while giving your opponent a single clue that they can spend 2 mana on later to draw a card. So the obvious comparison here is Declaration in Stone from the previous Innistrad block, which has certainly played a bit in Cube. Declaration in Stone exiles, but only hits creatures, and it does so at sorcery speed. When hitting a single creature, it makes a clue. There aren't many times when it will hit multiple creatures unless you're playing a lot of copy effects, but it does deal with tokens pretty nicely. I think if efficient removal is your priority, Fateful Absence is a clear addition that will help white quite a bit. In terms of what to replace from your current cube list, that's up to your preference on what you like and dislike about white removal, but you may choose to remove either Declaration in Stone or some sort of Banishing Light-esque enchantment-based removal. Alright, here's all those honorable mentions that I hinted about earlier. There's a lot in this set that I think could find its place in your cube depending on the themes that it has. A lot of cards that are good, they're just not necessarily good in what I would consider to be the average cube. Lunarch Veteran, a Soul Sister variant that can be disturbed back to the graveyard. Jaren, a human-centric aristocrats card that can grant lifelink and very rarely can turn into a giant demon. Fading Hope, an unsummoned variant that lets you scry if you return a cheap creature, and it can hit anyone's creature. Bereaved Survivor, a transform card that can repeatedly bring back cheap creatures, tapped and attacking. Rem Carolus Stalwart Slayer, a very spicy Sky Knight Legionnaire that protects you against burn and helps you with your own burn. Slowgurk the Overslime, a card that loves your fetch lands and helps get them back, but is probably not worth running over Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath. Still something interesting to consider. Suspicious Stowaway, a card that is strictly better than Looter Ilkor, assuming that you want to deal with the added complexity of the whole day-night thing. Augur of Autumn, a generally not as powerful Courser of Kruphix, but one that does dodge enchantment removal and can also let you cast creatures sometimes. You might just want to run it alongside Courser, honestly. Light Up the Night, an X-cost burn spell with flashback that feeds off your planeswalkers and deals extra damage to creatures and planeswalkers. If you want some sort of X damage fireball effect, this actually seems like it might be one of the best ones in a while. Flame Channeler. Most cubes have red burn as a draftable deck, and for those cubes, Flame Channeler seems like a great addition for a burn support creature. Teferi Who Slows the Sunset is another Teferi in a grand tradition of Teferi planeswalkers, but this one isn't particularly broken. If you're looking for a fair Teferi, this might be the one. If you're looking for the strongest blue-white planeswalker out there, this is not the one. Alright everyone, thanks so much for watching Masonzero MTG today. This has been Innistrad Midnight Hunt. I'm a big fan of Innistrad, as most people tend to be, and I'm excited for this set. Lots of cube-worthy cards. It was very hard to pick just 5 for the list, which is why I had a dozen honorable mentions. I think there's a lot in here that even I didn't cover that could be great for a lot of cubes, depending on your specific themes. So let me know what you're going to add in the comments below. And I'll also have my cube link in the comments below, or in the description below rather, if you want to check it out and see what I'm adding. So I will see you guys next time a set comes out. Hey, more Innistrad. Super excited for that.